Yes. All right. Hello, hello, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Am I on? Yes, I am. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Golden Gate Center for Spiritual Living. We are a tiny group this morning. I wonder what's going on. Is everybody home watching the Kentucky Derby? And for those of you online who are here with us today, thank you for being here. We're delighted that you're here. We're going to take a little bit of time now at the very beginning for everybody to be greeted. So I want to invite you to stand up and move around, introduce yourselves to anybody you don't know. Welcome people. Welcome those back you haven't seen in a while. And those of you online, take a moment to give yourself a hug and settle in. Maybe get another cup of coffee or tea. We'll be right back with you in just a moment to do the opening song. All right. Thank you, everyone. We have our own music coordinator with us today for special music. Carolyn Gautier, our music coordinator, and Chuck Tuminia are going to be singing together this morning, and they have been singing together for 45 years. Without pause, they've been singing together since they were 10 years old, basically, and have never stopped. So they met in the Lighthouse Singers Gospel Choir, in which they sang together for more than 20 years. And in the early 90s, Chuck joined Carolyn's band Full Circle, which played clubs all around the Bay Area. So they're going to be singing some special duets for us this morning, and we're going to join them in this first one right now. This is a prayer I'm sure you know, so please stand and join us in this song.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debt as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from all evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Thank you so much. We are off to an official start. We're going to actually now go ahead and silence cell phones so that they don't interrupt anybody during the service this morning. And then we're going to prepare to turn within and join together in consciousness. So we've already had a little taste of it with that opening song, but I'm going to invite Reverend M. Louise Mann up to do our morning prayer. It should be, yes. There we go.
And now is the time that we just take a deep breath and remember who we truly are in spirit, that we are one with the one life, that life lives in, as, and through us, that whole, perfect, and complete beingness that is always available as we turn within. And remember that God is, we are, and it all is one. And so I just claim for us this morning that we are open to this beautiful service, and that we are open to that divine presence within us unfolding in the perfect way for each one. And I just claim the good, I claim the joy, I claim the wonderful experience of being together. And not only are we together with each other, but we are together with that presence, and together with love and joy and all good. And so I am just saying, thank you, Mother, Father, God, as I release this word into the law. And together we say, and so it is.
Ave Maria, gratia plena, Maria, gratia plena, Maria, gratia plena, Ave, Ave Dominus, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tu, Iesus. Ave Maria.
Wow, thanks, Chuck. That was amazing. Not only beautiful voice, but a cappella. Ave Maria a cappella. That was pretty impressive. Thank you very much. Let's give them another hand. Yeah. All right. So as we move into the month of May now, because we're looking at sacred connections all year long, this month we're looking at connecting with the divine feminine. So this is a time in the unfoldment of humanity where we're noticing that the earth is being affected a lot by us. In the past, way back, it wasn't anything that we really intended or knew how to do anything about. Now we're moving forward with more information, but we also need to have the willingness and the intention and the priority. So the nurturing of the earth itself and everything that's on it, that nurturing kind of relates to a larger feminine quality of nourishing and nurturing. And we have moved very far in our cultures into the masculine or the divine masculine, the directive, the charging ahead, the getting it done, the prioritizing whatever the focus is out there. We've gotten really good at that, it seems, but we're out of balance now. And we kind of need to bring those things back together again. So we're looking this month at reconnecting with the divine feminine, which is not to say women per se, but the divine feminine in everybody, always. We need that balance, all of us. So I want to talk to you today about kind of how this might have started. It's my perspective that Eve was framed. And it starts right away in the Garden of Eden. So, as you know, in one of the creation stories, because there are two of them in the book of Genesis, they're not the same. In one of the stories, Eve is created from Adam's rib. I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. But anyway, so Adam was returning home kind of late one night, and Eve confronted him, and she said, "You're seeing another woman, aren't you?" He said, "Don't be ridiculous. You're the only woman there is." Right? Later that night, he woke up feeling a tickle on his chest and his abdomen, and he said, "What are you doing?" She said, "What do you think I'm doing? I'm counting your ribs." Just to make sure there wasn't another one out there somewhere. Now, let me go into this story. So there are two stories of creation. This is supposedly written, the book of Genesis, supposedly written by Moses. Who knows? But in the Hebrew tradition, it says that the first woman on earth in Hebrew, her name was Chava. And that is the Hebrew name that Eve is derived from, and it means to live, to give life, or to breathe. So in the first chapter of Genesis, the word Adam is plural. It's used with a bunch of plural verbs, and two people are the result of this creation of humanity, Adam as humanity. Different English versions of the Bible have started calling the man Adam at different places in their translations. But the second chapter, well, in the first chapter of Genesis, God creates everything, everything. Sun, moon, stars, earth, sky, animals, plants and animals, creatures that fly, creatures that swim, all of it, and then male and female created he them, according to his likeness, right? And that's the first pair of people. Now that's in the first chapter of Genesis. In the second chapter of Genesis, you start to then get individuals with names and personalities. And the order of creation is not the same in the second chapter. In the second chapter, all of the animals are created because Adam is lonely. So he's already there, the man. And he's lonely, so God says, well, we can fix that, Adam. So God makes a whole bunch of creatures, and Adam names them all. But nothing is really quite it. And so God says, well, what Adam really needs is a helper. Adam needs a helpmate, somebody like him. So God puts Adam into a deep sleep, takes one of his ribs, and makes a woman. Now, I suppose in this version of this story, well, no, that's not true either. I was going to say the animals came later. They did come later, but Eve wasn't there yet. So here are all these creatures, all the creatures of earth, who reproduce by having the female bring forth the young. And now we suddenly have Eve coming from Adam. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But anyway, Eve comes from Adam. And then she becomes his partner and his helpmate. So Adam and Eve are in the garden. It's beautiful. Everything you could possibly want is there. Every kind of food, fruit, vegetable, anything they could want to eat is there. It's all fine. The temperature is perfect. The weather is perfect. The seasons are perfect. Nobody is covered with anything and it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. It's all fine. And then God decides, I should find out if they're actually going to listen to me. And so God says, okay, see this tree right here? Now, you can eat anything you want from anywhere in the garden at any time except this. Don't eat anything from this tree or you'll die. What's death? Nobody's died. They don't know what death is, right? And they say, okay, fine. There's plenty of everything else to eat. No problem. So in that particular tree, there is a snake. And you'll notice here, we have all these apples on the altar. In the flowers, there's a snake. Not a real one, don't freak out. There's a snake in there. You'll have to come up and look at him afterwards. He looks innocuous, nothing bad about the snake. I mean, there were snakes, right? This snake talks, which may not have been unusual. Maybe everything talked, I don't know. So this snake is chatting with Eve. And he says, why do you suppose that God doesn't want you to eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Strange, huh? He says, I think God thinks if you eat this fruit, it's going to make you just like him. And he doesn't like that idea. But, really, wouldn't it be good if you were just like him? And so Eve considers, that makes some sense, she thinks. And she looks at the tree, and she looks at the fruit, and it sure looks good. It's big and round and juicy. And so finally she thinks, okay. So she takes the apple. It doesn't say it's an apple in the Bible, but somehow we've gotten the idea that it's an apple. She takes the apple, she takes a bite out of it, and it is amazing. It is fabulously delicious. And she runs over to Adam and she says, here, you got to try this. This is amazing. Now, Adam, interestingly, does not say, what is that? Where did you get that? Don't you know we're not supposed to eat that? No, Adam says, okay, and he eats it. And then, suddenly, they realize they're naked. Now, this is interesting. If you've never seen clothes, what is naked? If you've never been covered and nothing ever needed to be covered, why would you suddenly be embarrassed about any part of yourself? They didn't ask me. So they're embarrassed because they're naked, and so they hide. They're ashamed of their nakedness. And God, like any great parent, notices it's too quiet. And God thinks, oh, they're up to something. So God goes for a walk in the garden looking for them and calling them by name. And nothing. Calls some more. Nothing. Calls again. Finally, they peek out. And God looks around at them and says, what are you doing? Where were you? What is this all about? Adam says, well, we were naked. We were embarrassed, so we hid ourselves. God says, who told you were naked? Did you possibly eat from that tree that I told you not to eat from? And so, of course, everything goes to pot at that point. They get kicked out of the garden, and they have to work hard, and Eve has to experience labor, and Adam has to work the sweat of his brow in order for them to get food and all of that. So now the question is, what is this story about? What is this story about? So in a tribal society where not very much is known about seasons and weather and planting and so on, and life is hard, you might, as a tribe, begin to wonder, why is it so hard? Surely it wasn't always this hard. I bet we had it really easy in the beginning and something went wrong, and that's why it's so hard now. Now, at that time, many of the world cultures had an earth goddess, a powerful earth goddess, the creator of life, which made total sense if you look at all the animals. So the earth goddess brought forth life, fed everybody, provided animals and plants that were used for clothing and all of that. But the Hebrews had a male sky god. Now, the female earth mother, that goddess, her symbol was a snake. It was a symbol of female power because of the power to give birth and the power to bleed without dying. And that was a mystery. So, in order to preserve their religion in a situation in which there were a lot of alternatives around them, this story comes forth putting down the snake and the woman, putting down the female, putting up the male sky god. And so when we were actually in Chinchero in Peru, I think it was in Chinchero, there is a little church. And the little church, the little Catholic church, was built on top of a sacred site that was dedicated to the old religion. And so in order to get the people to begin to turn away from the old religion, they did something very clever. On the steps leading up to the entrance to the church, they embedded pagan symbols of the goddess so that they would have to walk on them, which was very disrespectful to anybody, have to walk on them to get into the church, to put them down. Are you following this? It also allowed the Hebrew nation to maintain their hierarchy and their traditions so that the men had a place and their job was to obey God. Adam and Eve didn't obey God, and that led to all kinds of problems. The men's job was to obey God. The woman's job was to be in the background, to be subservient to the male, to obey the male, to take care of the children, and to be in that role. That was her role. So they maintained the tradition of their sky god religion and of the hierarchy of how everything was supposed to work in the culture. This was, I think, to help them survive as an intact culture at the time. And it also says that there will be trouble if you don't do this. Things will get worse if you don't do this. It's bad enough now, right? You don't want to struggle any more than you already do. So honor the story and live your lives accordingly. And so original sin was disobeying God in the garden. And really, it's all Eve's fault by way of a snake. By way of a snake, which doesn't have a name, and we don't know if the snake who talked to her was male or female, but we know what the symbolism is for the snake. So here we have all of that, and Bruce Feiler, who's an American writer, said Adam and Eve, and especially Eve, are victims of the greatest character assassination in the world that the world has ever known. Eve is not secondary. Eve, if anything, is the great initiator in the story. She's the first independent woman. Now, actually, in other Hebrew writings, not in the Hebrew Bible, but in other Hebrew writings, Adam had a wife before Eve. Her name was Lilith. And Lilith was not a suitable wife ultimately for Adam because she was too sensual. So she was sent away out into the world. So here we have one wife has been rejected already for being too sensual. Then we have another one who's disobedient. And we have this earth mother who's actually a demon in disguise, causing all these problems. And so we have to put things right. We have to put things right by removing that power from the earth mother goddess and giving it back to God, to put down this old religion and recognize the power of this new thing that's coming forward now. It needed to be discredited, and also it allowed them to frighten and control the people. Oh, you don't want to irritate Yahweh. That wouldn't be a good idea. So Matthew Fox wrote this: original blessing, while it does apply to humans, also very much applies to the 13.8 billion years of the universe's work that preceded the human. The universe has been an original blessing from the get-go. That is what Genesis 1 is saying in its cosmology story, telling us repeatedly that various moments and beings and creations are good or beautiful. The Hebrew word can mean either one. And when humans arrive, very good or very beautiful. That's what Genesis 1 says about creation. So I wonder if somebody else actually wrote Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. But anyway, he goes on to say, how some theologians and church leaders miss this point and dive into the Adam and Eve story as if that were the first story in the Bible baffles me, he says. That is, until one asks some political questions about the compulsion to control and feed guilt and shame as a device to control and to more successfully carry on empire building married to religion. Now, that might be a little harsh. I think they were trying to survive in a place where there were a lot of different cultures that were vying for supremacy of their particular god or goddess. So they needed to do that as well. The question is, though, what is paradise really? And what is life really? And what was going on if we look at that story a little bit differently? So our founder, Ernest Holmes, wrote, if we believe we are suffering, we shall suffer. That makes a certain amount of sense. Life responds to us in the way we approach it. Let us choose to be identified with power, with love and beauty, with peace and happiness. Let us identify ourselves with abundance and with success. The objective form to which we give our attention is created from the very attention we give it. Okay, so the people felt like they were suffering, and so they had a story about how things got to be that way. All right. And we, in our world now, we have a lot of stories about how our lives got to be the way they are, how our culture got to be the way it is, how the world got to be the way it is. So we might say, well, I have trauma from my childhood. That's why I'm the way I am. Or we might say, well, the Industrial Revolution or the technological revolution has changed the world so much that that's why the world is the way it is. That's why there's so much greed, or there's so much this, that, or the other. Is that really it? Or is it the way we're looking that makes all of that feel and look that way? That's what Ernest Holmes is saying. He goes back in the book Love and Law. He says, in the beginning, God conceived or thought substance. And then God thought upon this substance and made form. This substance was within God, for where else could God go for this substance when there was nothing but God? God thought this substance and it was made. God thought upon itself and produced all that is. We then come from that, and what we think also has a tendency to show up in forms like what we already believe to reinforce our belief. Our brains do not care if what we believe is true. All they know how to do is produce more of that for us. That's what our subconscious creative process does. It acts upon those beliefs. And if that isn't accurate, we would never know, because the way that our brains work allows us to continue to reinforce what we already believe with, a few contradictions which we can look upon just as outliers. Those are the odd cases. They're not the rule, right? And the more we do that, the more we discover that things are not working as well as we would like. But what we don't think of doing is, what if I thought about this differently? What if I reinterpreted what's happening to me? What if there's some good somewhere in this mess that the whole game is for me to discover it, to find it, to increase that? What if that was the point? So we find that then when we take that sky god and make that sky god supreme, the male sky god, removed from us, differently from an earth mother, which is right here, removed from us, then we need an intermediary to help us communicate with that capricious, angry, but very powerful sky god who can do all kinds of good stuff for us as long as we stay in line and do what we're supposed to be doing. You with me here? Yes? Are you in a trance, or are you actually following what I'm saying? Okay. All right. So that original sin, what if we go back to the first chapter in Genesis and say, well, there never was original sin. Everything God made was good. God said so, including us. So it was all good. Okay. So if it was all good, then how did we wind up in this mess? We want some kind of a story to explain what happened. Well, there were two trees in the Garden of Eden. There was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, when you understand and can discern between good and evil, there are certain things that are available that were not available when you didn't know. So maybe paradise is just a state of unawareness, of not knowing. Now, when we eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, now we know there are choices, and we discover that choices have consequences. So that it becomes important for us then to discern between the good and evil, not because we're going to get punished for it, but because there are consequences, and maybe we don't like those consequences, so we decide to make a different choice. It's a kinder way of shepherding us in a direction. We don't have to be afraid of it. We just have to take responsibility. We have to see that we have a choice. That choice is powerful and that it has consequences. So which direction am I likely to go if I know that? And then there was another tree. Now, God doesn't tell them not to eat of the tree of life, but there's no discussion about whether they did or not. So let's just assume that they got scooted out of the garden before they had a chance to eat that particular tree. Now, what would the tree of life be about? Because they were already created to be eternal beings. We say in Science of Mind, you're not going to earn your way into eternal life. You already have it. You were already in it when you came here. You were somewhere else before that. When you're done here, you're going to go someplace else. If there's reincarnation or not, Ernest Holmes didn't believe in it, but he didn't care if we did. So something came before, something comes after. In the middle, we take these spacesuits and we wear them here, and we do our business through the sensory and brain process of this particular form, this vehicle, for now. Now, Father Sean O'Lear, who is a rebel priest down in San Jose, in fact, does not preach at a typical Catholic church, but he does have a Catholic church, and he does Mass and a sermon there once a month. Other things happen the other weeks. And Reverend Sean, Father Sean, talked about this once quite a while back. He said, there's another tree in the garden. God never said they couldn't eat from that tree, but apparently they never did, because in the story, God sort of hustled them out of the garden quickly before they would. And that was the tree of life. And he says, I think maybe it's time for us to go in the back way, climb over the fence into the garden, and eat of that other tree, the tree of life. The tree of life, I think, is not about establishing eternal life so that we wouldn't die. Physically, it would get boring if you were here forever. So we have to let the vehicle go. At some point, its mileage is done. We're out of here. But that tree of life, perhaps, carries some of the secrets of what is necessary for us as human beings here to create a life right here that is thriving and fulfilling and beautiful and peaceful and kind and supportive. Now so if you eat one fruit and it reveals to you the possibility of infinite choices, and you eat the other fruit and it gives you a clue as to which choices will allow that life that you're producing to become as wonderful as possible, I wonder, could it be that paradise isn't somewhere else? That it isn't a place so much as we are already in it, but we don't see it because we didn't eat the fruit from the other tree. So we don't perceive the paradisishness of this planet. Now, that's not everywhere we go. That's not everybody we interact with. That's not everything we see. And yet, on this planet, the amount of abundance and gorgeosity is pretty immense. It's pretty amazing how much beauty and abundance and amazing, miraculous life there is everywhere we look. Let's see if I can get this statistic right. From, I think, The Holographic Universe, or one of those books, it said every square centimeter of space contains more energy than all of the matter in the known universe. That's a lot of energy, right? And yet, within all of those little centimeters of molecules and atoms and planetary life, everywhere we look, there's something astounding. Do you know why grass grows? I don't. And all it takes to encourage it is that much water. And suddenly the grass pops up. Now, if we don't give it more water, it doesn't last. But 2 years later, you water it again, grass comes up. It's amazing. Have you ever walked someplace where you see a plant coming out of the side of a rocky hillside? What made it think that was the way to go? Why is it that mushrooms have a whole underground network of communication? It's like their freeway, their internet, their highway. We don't need to know any of that stuff. But if we look at the sky today, it never looked like that before. Ever. Not just like that. If we go out and we look at something that's blooming out here on the patio, those flowers were never there before. Those particular ones, those particular colors were never there exactly like that before. Every rock you pick up and look at is different from every other rock. How important is a rock? But they're individually beautiful. Everything that we look at, everything we have created or invented, this whole setup for filming, the music, all of our equipment for music, the sound back there, the camera and computer setup over here, all of that stuff we made from stuff that was already here. We didn't create any of it. We just put it together. We took a whole bunch of stuff and we figured out if we put it together, it would do this or it would do that. If we take all these fruits and we put them all together, we have fruit salad. What a nice change. It's a whole new thing. But everything was already here, given freely. How much more paradise do we really need? If we had no challenges, if we had no choices because everything was all perfect for us all the time, what would be the point, really? What a dull game this would be, you know? I think that the reason that we do art, any kind of art expression, singing, dancing, theater, painting, sculpture, anything, and the reason that we play games is because we don't know exactly how it will turn out in that moment. It might be different than what we hoped for or expected, or it might be way better than what we imagined. But we are compelled to kind of experiment, to find out, to try this, to look at that, to put different things together. Does this make sense what I'm saying to you? What a wonderful opportunity to play and discover and grow, right? Now, at some point, it seems to me, the human race has to grow into a place where, as a global community, on this planet anyway, we learn that our destiny is completely wired up with everybody else's. That there is no country, no person, no plant, no animal that doesn't depend on us, and we depend on it for our aliveness and our livelihood. It may be more than 6 degrees of separation away from us and Kevin Bacon, but even so, the connections exist. Some ancient cultures and religions already knew this. But as a global community, we still need to get it. We need to understand it, but we also need to get it so that we shift from this sort of adolescent way of being, which is where humanity is right now, and we move into a more adult phase of humanity where we begin to find ways to cooperate with each other, to collaborate, to create together rather than thinking that we have to compete in order for a good job to be done. We're not there yet, but there are little dots all over the planet of groups and organizations and people coming together who are trying hard to grow into this. And there may be some that already have it. Most of us are still kind of going, I don't know, I really like what these people do, and I really don't like what those people do, so I wish I just didn't have to deal with those people at all. That's too complicated. I don't even want to see them. Instead, on that side and on this side, coming together and thinking, okay, we are here to listen to each other until we understand. It could take a long time, and maybe we're not ready for that yet. We still have to deal with the problem of how do we take all these individualizations of the divine, which is what we all are, how do we take all these individualizations of the divine and calm down the ego, shortage thinking, competition? Because there's really already plenty for all of us. It's a distribution issue. It's a willingness issue. It's a helpfulness issue. We just haven't quite made it over that hump. But we do try to go in that direction. For better or worse, we do it the best that we can. So I came across this oath somewhere in the past that I thought was so interesting. It said, in the face of adversity, uncertainty, and conflicting sensory information, I hereby pledge to remain ever mindful, now that's kind of a tall order, but of the magical, infinite, loving reality, a reality that conspires timelessly in my favor. I further recognize that living within space and time as a creation amongst creations is the ultimate adventure, because thoughts become things, dreams do come true, and all things remain forever possible. As a being of light, I hereby resolve to live, love, and be happy at all costs, no matter what, with reverence and kindness for all. Now that's a big deal to try and do something like that. But the truth is, now this is Lake Moraine in Alberta, Canada. The truth is, recognizing and experiencing paradise begins within. It's not about what the universe provides for us. The universe has already provided a ton for us, totally free. Here it is, take it, do what you will with it. Now it's our seeing, our perceiving, you see. We learned that we had choices. Oh boy, we have choices, we can make things happen. This is fabulous, we understand that. Let's go out and do it. We're going to conquer the world. No, maybe conquering the world isn't the idea. But when we see differently, when we learn to perceive wholeness, when we learn to perceive a gift, even in the midst of a mess, then we got something going. We're moving in a particular direction. So it's time to give Eve a break. She probably did us a big favor by eating of the tree. Now we should go back and see if we can't eat some more of the other tree so that we can begin to recognize and live in the paradise that's been given to us. Namaste. All right. Okay. Let's take a moment to anchor this in prayer. So as we turn within together, as our outer eyes close, the inner eye opens with the clarity and recognition that everywhere I look, I see the face of God. Everywhere I look. Whether I recognize it or feel it in this moment or not, that presence is all there is here and everywhere. And that presence is what I am made from. That presence is what everything is made from. So within that presence and within each of us, I know that there is an energy, there is a wisdom, there is a divine givingness, there is a deep bonding love, a tenderness of recognition that everything is that divine expression. And so I take hold of the awe of being a child, discovering in the world and delighting in and enjoying all of the wonders of what can be done and created and felt. All of those choices that are given to me as the original blessing are still here. And so for each of us, I know that our opportunity to reach out and to choose another perspective opens the way to a natural consequence of greater peace, greater abundance, greater freedom, greater joyfulness, more health, more celebration. I contemplate this with gratitude. I know that this possibility exists in everything and everyone. So I call it forth from my own consciousness with gratitude, with openness, with willingness and peace. I let this prayer go into the creative law of mind and spirit, where it is acted upon now, right now. And I accept the good that is being manifested right now. I let this prayer go into the heart of the divine, where it always has been the truth. I let it go, and I let it be. And together we say, and so it is.